Mm.
All right. 3, 2,
1.
Record.
Record.
All right. We're fucking recording.
I guess we're recording now, guys.
I don't know if this is gonna work, but all right. You know what? This is on KY to figure out, not me.
That's right. We're working out the kinks. We're giving it a shot. Now just put in the background.
I think we got it. One more time. Record. Honestly, I didn't hear the R-E. I didn't hear that. I just heard cord. Can we try?
Cord.
Were you saying cord?
Cord.
I'm saying cord.
You're saying cord.
I'm saying cord with an H.
Gotcha.
Now we've said it so many times, it has no meaning.
It has no meaning. We're here. Everybody, welcome to the Lesser Known People podcast. I'm your host this evening, Ryan the Lion, the big cat. I am joined by the beautiful, I just saw him last night, Justin, J Money, J Master. And I am joined by KY, Kyle, who he's looking good. He's looking thin. He's looking thin too. He's looking good and thin.
Ryan, you broken your own rule and you didn't give Justin any room to introduce himself.
Yeah, but in reality, hey, Ryan.
Welcome to the Lesser Known People podcast. There are 3 of us this evening, as we're missing some participants. And first of all, I'm flanked by the beautiful, saw him last night, Justin, J Money, J Master. Sir, how you doing this evening?
I'm good. Usually I'm supposed to go last because I fuck up these intros, but think this is fine.
You know what? We'll take that. That's cool too. That's a good
take. It's a hot take.
That's a hot take. Hot mic out here. We've never done this before. This is our first episode ever, guys. KY Kyle. Also a KY Jelly. Beautiful man. He's looking thin. How are you? How you doing?
I feel thicker than I did yesterday. I'm a thicker jelly.
Do you?
I'm more of a maybe like what's on a charcuterie board? What's thicker? A pate? I'm feeling pate-ish.
He's feeling pate-ish.
Yeah.
Fun story about Kyle. He has never shown us his birth certificate, so I don't know. I don't know, honestly, if he can even be doing this podcast, quite frankly.
Yeah, we actually talked about this last night. We have no idea what nationality you are, KY.
Yeah. Preface this joke. No, you're German, right? It's German.
No, so I was going to say, I didn't want to correct Justin a couple episodes ago when we talked about it, but I am actually mostly English. So.
Oh, that's right. You found that out because you thought it was German for a while, and now it's okay.
Yeah. The last name is deeply German. Don't know. I mean, clearly the English steal a lot, so we fucking yanked that bitch from the Germans. And mostly English.
Mostly, okay. We're missing our beautiful Connor, who we saw yesterday evening. He is out. What I can only assume is hunting down child sex trafficking rings. That would be my assumption of what he's doing.
Yeah, that's verbatim what he said he was doing.
Yeah. I think I remember him saying that briefly. He kind of brought it up. Connor, he's low key. He's not gonna jump to conclusions.
Yeah, he really had a wrangle on Pizzagate. Those years ago, and he's been using the learning points from that to really track down these underground child sex rings.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it was something associated with QAnon and Pizzagate. I think he's working closely to track those down.
Yep.
Sean is, to our knowledge, he might be moving this evening. I don't know, but Sean, we miss you. You're beautiful. Missing out on another great episode, Bal.
Here's what we know about Sean. He is somewhere rubbing conditioner into his entire body.
Yeah, well, it does need it. It does need it. I do want to bring up, it's been stated many times of his luscious coat that he has on, maybe for chest hair. And it's a good looking chest hair. It's not like it's gross.
No. He's if anybody at home wants to envision a man's chest hair, and just envision it with me quickly here. Imagine Tom Selleck, thick as the day is wide, and just a coat, a real rug of hair.
Yeah.
But majestic.
And you know what the thing is? The thing is, he's not trying to sell you reverse mortgages either, like Tom Selleck. He is just a beautiful guy with a nice chest hair. Good chest hair. Healthy chest hair.
No shot at Sean whatsoever, but given the opportunity and the need for money, Sean would absolutely sell a reverse mortgage in a moment.
Absolutely. If you gave him what you give Tom Selleck, he would show up and start talking about reverse mortgages. No question.
Yep.
No
Just
question.
like they had Wilford Brimley selling that diabetes medication. And that was Wilford Brimley is the most unhealthy person anyone has ever seen in their lives.
And R.I.P. to Wilford Brimley. He did just pass. Beautiful man. Great for you. Good diabetic spokesperson.
The only thing I know him from is the diabetes commercials.
Diabetes.
Yep. And I think when he was on that horse in those commercials, both his feet were already gone. At that
they were just filled in. It was filled in. They were stuffed. The boots were stuffed.
Stuffed boots. Women stuff their bras, and Wilford Brimley stuffed his boots.
He stuffed his boots. He did stuff his boots. Yeah.
It's just Hollywood,
Do you remember, kind of early days of memes? People were posting cats that looked like Wilford Brimley, and they had, and that fucking honestly, that killed me for 2 fucking years.
Oh,
that was my comedy. I could not move on from that fucking meme.
That was my comedy.
It didn't get any better. It didn't. Anyways, welcome. We're excited for this evening. It's another trio. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah,
and our character.
It's thin, but it's good. Just like my hairline, baby.
Thin, and you know what? Kyle it is thin, but it looks great. It does look great.
It does look good.
It looks very good. Kyle looks thin, and the hairline looks good too. And that's what I want people to know, that image. He's in a shed right now with a lot of bugs.
Yeah, so KY makes whale pattern baldness look good. Also, KY is very Unabomber-ish lately. The beard's coming in, got the shack.
Yeah, he's got the shack. But it's a good trim on the beard. It's not like it's wily.
It's a good trim. What I'm going for is young Dumbledore, Jude Law in the most recent Harry Potter franchise shit. Because Jude Law, to me, and men who are balding, I hope you appreciate this as well. Handsome guy, balding relatively gracefully. I'm not going to say there probably isn't a wig somewhere involved there, but he's showing off a receding hairline, and he's handsome. So we got to celebrate him. We got to put him up. We got to put him up there.
Jude Law, you are going to get that guy on your team for male baldness. He's definitely he's showing up there. And they're happy to have him. Recruit check. Hey, Jude, welcome, Jude.
Welcome.
I can't relate. I got a lot of hair up top, but Jude, you're welcome. You're welcome.
You two bastards are clowning me right now. But Big Cat,
no. Look, man. I use Rogaine. If you're listening, I use Rogaine.
We'll take that sponsor.
Yeah,
Rogaine.
For sure.
If you need it, it's there.
Yeah,
Rogaine.
Not unlike my hair. It's going fast. It's going hard. I need wherever to help. I don't look good bald. I can't do it. Once my hair's gone, just kill me.
I gotta say, with no hair up top, I look menacing. I look pretty terrible too.
Well, for those who haven't seen Ryan in person, and usually it's a orgasmic experience to see him in person. But I will say the hair makes you human. Without the hair, reptilian always.
Definitely reptilian. And I want the viewers to know I'm probably more cold-blooded than mammal. Yeah.
Ryan does have an electric rock he sits on most of the day.
And just heat up, and then my skin changes according to the vibes around me. And that's how I've lived most of my life.
Yeah.
Gotten 31 years on that kick. This evening, I am very excited about this particular gentleman. This is a story of really pursuing all odds. Our suspect we are talking about this evening, true American, one that is criminally underreported, under-discussed. Frederick Thomas is who we're dealing with.
Old Steady Freddy.
That's right. So Frederick Thomas, let me start off. He born 1872. He was born in the Delta region, particularly Clarksdale, Mississippi, and he was born to former slaves. 1872, obviously, for those of you who have any timeline of American history, Civil War just finished up within the decade there. His family, his parents are right after, during Reconstruction, they were fortunate enough and had saved up enough that they actually, for $20, bought 200 acres of land
Wow.
Yeah. They
It's a
were.
good deal.
It was a really good deal. Really good deal. So they saved up. They purchased 200 acres. They actually were successful. They turned profit on the land. That turned into about 600 acres as they made more purchases. They opened one of the few kind of black churches in the area. Things were going well. It was when we studied this time period, immediately kind of the beginning of Reconstruction, you did have black businessmen who were successful. You had individuals who were black who ran for office, and this was truly a successful case. They have a neighbor in the region who decides that, really just kind of based on the racist dynamics of the time, will sue them, thinking they don't deserve the land that they own. They take it to the county court. They win, purely because the judge is in a land battle with the individual who is suing them. So they end up winning. Let's not look at this as like a Disney film of like, that's wrong, and then there's a really nice montage and things are happy. It is purely, these are two just white men who are racist, who hate each other, and these folks have benefited. You take the W where you can.
So the guy that's suing them is just such a huge dick that he's even pissed off the judge in the region.
That's exactly right. He's willing to overlook
all racial
yeah.
stigma at the time. Just like, you know what, fuck that. Fuck you, dude.
In Coahoma County, the judge is basically like, fuck you, you little fucking rat. I'm done with you. I'm going to fuck you over on this. Yeah. So the Thomas family wins. They are still, thriving in the region. He decides he'll up it to the Supreme Court. Obviously, we have an understanding of U.S. history, and Reconstruction does not end well. There is kind of lynch mobs that are roving through the area as kind of most white leaders start retaking hold of the region. The family actually moves surprisingly, to Memphis, Tennessee. A little bit safer out that way. They are still engaged in a legal battle with this guy who has now taken it to the state Supreme Court in Mississippi.
So what's the basis of which he's suing them? Like what?
Yeah,
what's the idea?
So the basis was he actually thought because they were former slaves, his belief was that he owned the land of Frederick Thomas's parents.
Oh, even though they bought it for $20.
Even though they bought it for $20, he thought purely, and I don't need to tell anyone the disgusting mindset of that type of the sentiment, but yeah, he believed they essentially weren't worth owning that land. They didn't deserve it. He should have it. It's rightfully his. Wow. If he sounds like a giant racist dick, he is a giant racist dick. And clearly the judge from the county court knew that, and it is now up to the Supreme Court. So they move out to Memphis. Frederick is enjoying actually getting a pretty solid education. There was a group of northern individuals who came and had opened a school. He is kind of roughly high school age at this point. This is roughly 1890 or so. While he's there, before the case is even settled, a group shows up and murders his dad, which is terrifying.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Some real...
You're really softballed it in there.
Yeah, real Southern oppression going on here.
I'm sure there's more to the story, but kind of get on. But they just, because he was a black property owner in the South, not a fan.
Purely black property owner in the South. So Frederick's immediate environment is in the Delta, facing true oppression, true signs of the time during Reconstruction. Clarksdale, famous today. It gave us some of our best blues artists came out of there. You Muddy Waters, a lot of really prominent individuals. Anyways, he goes from Frederick is basically saying, I want out. I want nothing to do with this area. So Frederick Bruce Thomas, our hero, decides he is cutting loose. And in the 1890s, he wants to move to Chicago. He moves to Chicago and then he also moves to New York a bit later with the idea, I'm going to be a waiter. Waiter at the time, you get into a nice restaurant, that is a truly kind of portable profession. You can move around, obviously, to different really high-end restaurants. You can make a good living.
Yeah,
So he
and
goes
in Chicago and New York, you could make a serious living, especially as a black man from the South, kind of a transplant. If he
yeah.
could get in as a waiter, he could make some serious cash and really support himself, send money home.
And that was really the idea. And keep in mind, he's motivated by seeing his parents, who were highly successful,
Right.
despite it being taken away from him due to circumstantial, discrimination. They were very successful. They were
Yeah.
probably one of the most prominent black families in the area. So he's highly motivated. I want to make my own name. The South is just not working for me. I want to bring up, obviously, South at this time. This is years before. This is probably 30, 40 years before the Great Migration, okay, where you had black individuals going in droves essentially to northern cities. He is doing this on his own. So Chicago at this time had a relatively small black population, as did New York when he went there. He decides he's going to travel even further. So he saves up enough, he goes to Europe. He works as a waiter in England. He works as a waiter in France.
Wow, that's insane. That's freaking crazy.
Yeah. And each time it's basically you are true kind of you're just a true troubadour here. You're just moving around, doing your thing. I'm going to save up enough and just keep moving. I have no home, essentially, is what he's saying.
So when he took off out of the Delta to head north, did he take any type of like estate with him? Did he have any money kind of left
Very
over from
little.
his family?
And to his name, I think he was given just a small amount, kind of what his mom could kind of save to give him. That specific detail isn't necessarily known because I think he wanted to go and do this on his own merit, A. And B, I don't think his family necessarily had a whole lot at that time because they did eventually lose their property in the court case. And I'm really not entirely sure what the mother was left with after obviously the really horrific events. So
the greater court ended up taking the land from them?
Yeah, I believe they ended up losing the land in that. No, actually, I don't even know if it was the court. I think they were just the kind of era of oppression that was going on. It was kind of taken away. So you did, obviously and again, not to insult any of our listeners, but clearly there was the legal matter of being a black person in the South as Reconstruction comes to an end and there's, color codes that come into place. But then there's also just the purely racist actions that are being taken place by a lot of individuals in the South who's, subscribe to horrid beliefs who are trying to.
Well, yeah, I mean, that explains the death of his father. I mean, outside of any warranted act of violence against them during the time period, you have to suppose nothing but hatred and bigotry.
Yeah. And that's essentially what was going on here. And so he wanted nothing to do with that, as any individual who's probably living in the South thought. He's just forward thinking. He's not going to stick around for, the years and years that's going on in the South of oppression and soon to be Jim Crow laws and lynching mobs, that sort of thing. He's done with it. So again, he goes to Chicago, tries to cut his teeth there. He goes to New York, and he's picking up certain trades as he goes along. He goes, as we stated, to London. He saved up enough there. He went to France. Finally, he decides, I'm going to try to go to Russia. Russia at this time, we're under, obviously this is pre-revolution. We'll talk about when we get into the revolution later, but under the Tsar, their idea is, first of all, being a black man going to Russia at this time, you are really, I want to say this, you're going to stand out a little bit. A lot of bit. You're going to stand out a lot of bit. You're going to stand out a lot of bit. But he gets there.
A black guy standing in the Red Square today with a place.
Yeah. No, we're going to get into how wonderful Russia is in just a minute. It's just a hot minute here. But so he goes there. He essentially seeks sanctuary there. They allow him in on his whatever passport he has. And he starts the process of full citizenship. They say, we are colorblind here. We see no color. This is fine. You come here. You be successful. That's fine. He starts working at essentially a restaurant of kind of one of the aristocrats in the society who's also very prominent and very friendly with the Tsar himself. So as you can imagine, you have now worked your way up to, you're in good favor with the folks that are there.
Wow. He kind of did what, not exactly what he set out to do, but
No.
he didn't go to Europe to Europe to make a name for himself and be friendly with royals, as much as I'm sure he went there to try to be as successful as he could in some capacity. And in doing so, he did his job so well that he became friendly with people in high places, which I think that's not a bad job for someone in the service industry.
This is the straight up this is truly you could not pen a more perfect story here.
Right. Cinderella story.
Yeah. So he gets there, he works as a maitre d', he's enjoying it. He takes up the name Frederick Thomas. So he has now actually changed his name so he sounds Russian. He is in Moscow. Moscow at this time, and Moscow to this day is relatively international. It's a major city in Russia. But at this time, it's people kind of from all over Russia. Justin, I'm sure you can speak to this better than I have because you've traveled literally the entire world. But at this time, it's a lot of different folks who, it's a diverse looking group of people. So he doesn't necessarily stand out as what we would consider kind of the maybe more Western Russian looking individual compared to purely just a black man.
I think if he went to Russia today, he might actually stick out a little bit more. I know, like in the time, the early 1900s, like Russia had pretty open borders. Afghanistan was actually like a big tourist destination for the Russians.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of like Afghans there. There's a lot of people from Southeast or from
and it's right in that
West
time
Asia.
because this is I mean, you nailed it. This is roughly 1899 he has decided to go there. So he's been traveling since roughly the mid 90s through late 1890s.
Yeah. And he's still a relatively young man. I mean, certainly, and I think to Justin's point, you have people from the Eurasian steppe coming over and you forget that they share so much border going east that there is all this bleed over in culture. So seeing what is a traditional Black American man in Russia at the time wouldn't be quite as arresting, I think, to Justin's point, as it is now, where you're only kind of seeing your Russian white faces. So that's honestly, I didn't know any of this. That's crazy to me.
Yeah, because Moscow at that time was, again, to your point, it is a lot of different groups from Russia that are coming over and are settling in that area.
Right.
So he felt comfortable. He wasn't necessarily standing out. So he works as a maitre d'. He works his way up. He's in enough good graces. He begins opening restaurants and theaters, primarily mostly working in the theaters. He has taken out a huge portion of Moscow in their kind of entertainment district.
Oh, so he's opening this shit. He's
opening. This is under his name. This is who. These are his properties. He is making his fucking nugget on these. This is his success. It's all from his own well-being here.
I'm sure, because I know that we're in the baby steps of this fucking story. But can you imagine him telling his mom, "Yeah, Ma, I made it to Russia and I'm opening theaters and shit. This is the promised land."
This is the promised land. There is something I want to bring up because a very interesting portion of U.S. Russian relations is years later. So just to show you how much of a trendsetter our Frederick Bruce Thomas is, years later, particularly more towards the 1920s during the Harlem Renaissance, where you had, like a Langston Hughes, that sort of thing, who had gone to Russia and they were kind of carousing there, to also 1930s when we're well into the Great Depression, and you have individuals who are African-American who decide that kind of screw everything here. There's no jobs to be had even for white folks, and we're still being discriminated against. They go to Russia and they're able to find work.
Yeah.
And at that time, oddly enough, Russian sentiments, they were actually kind of taunting folks in the U.S. like, look, you guys can't handle it. One of the things that Russia will always tout is the Depression didn't necessarily hit them, which isn't necessarily true. Their economy functions much differently. So, but yes, if you were to be Black in a society that deems itself quote unquote colorblind, you'll probably be able to get a job that pays something in communist Russia as opposed to, the US and the rest of the world that is struggling economically. But this man is doing this years before. We are talking even before the revolution. So this is early 1900s that he's doing this. I just wanted to add that in so people had some context that, yes, years later this is pursued and this becomes a very real thing by a lot of people. But this guy is such a trendsetter. He is doing this years before.
Right. And to speak to about, the culture in Russia is that it wasn't prohibitive towards anyone of color. Again, they're seeing Afghans, they're seeing folks in the Middle East, they're seeing, people from Asia. And now you've got our buddy Freddie is bopping around being like, I want to open a business. Can I get a business loan? And they're like, yeah, dude, no problem. Sure. You got some scratch to put down on it? Yeah, money's money, baby. Let's do it. And it's a little like, nobody, I think, in this podcast wants to prop Russia up on this great pedestal. That's not what we're about. Yeah. But to say they were definitely more open at the time for persons of color across the spectrum to be like, open a fucking business, bro. We'll see how it goes.
Under the czar, right? So there's still just a hybrid functioning economy. They want to be a world power. This is our the old Russian Empire, essentially. Right. So he is thriving. They are nightclubs. And, my incredibly talented gentleman, nightclub is a broad term. And I think that needs to be brought up.
I feel like there's going to be a caveat coming here.
There's a lot of caveats. I want to spin about 5 or 6 caveats here. So there is, when I was reading up on this gentleman, there were the respectable, they're all respectable. They're all respectable. If you're listening, they're all respectable. But there was the more maybe mainstream. I want to use that term. That's the term we'll use. Mainstream pursuits by Frederick, where your theater was maybe you'd have a opera singer maybe one night. You'd have maybe it would be a full-on comedy show. It would be a play. Later on in the evening was maybe a show where perhaps women who looked, I want to say maybe beautiful, showed up in very little clothing.
Yeah, quote unquote. People who look good naked showed up and
did. The thing is, maybe they had very little clothing, and I want to say maybe they danced too.
This sounds like a very industrious young man using the things, those big fat Russian titties.
Big fat Russian titties.
And then, honestly, let's just pause here. Everyone knows about these Russian titties. This is well.
Yeah, this is not. This is. I mean, we've all seen girls around the world. Thank goodness for Girls Gone Wild, because that was really exploration for a lot of us.
And thank goodness for our one true sponsor, Pornhub.
Pornhub.
You're never
if you're
alone.
lonely in the pandemic, Pornhub. We're there for you.
Pornhub. Look at some big fat Russian titties.
Yeah, look up some big fat Russian titties.
Oh,
that is a tab on there.
Yes, that is a great one. Pornhub's picking us up for that. I was in Romania for quite some time, and I could tell you there's nothing better than some nice, economically oppressed Eastern Bloc titties.
Yeah, Eastern Bloc titties. And these are the grandmother's. And Freddie was walking down the road, and he was like,
Freddie,
you know what my 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. could use is some swinging tits.
Yeah. Basically, it was like, you know where the money's at? Once these guys drop off their wives at home, they want to come out for titties because the wife isn't putting out. So he's out here. He goes out. He has these theaters that are, and it is a massive amount. It's basically the majority of their entertainment district is what he owns out now. So, and they do range between what we would consider, maybe again, mainstream entertainment to or something you go to, or maybe you find your uncle in an afternoon. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. Uncle Ed, if you're listening, I saw you that day at Heartbeat at 3 p.m. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of girls I went to high school with still hanging out at Heartbeats.
Yeah. If you are any member of the band Kiss, this would be more the establishment for you. Yes. That's what I'm thinking.
Yes. Now, and let's to take it back to our hero. Freddie saw the spectrum of entertainment, and he chose to touch every piece of that.
He's going to touch every single. Well, you're a businessman. You're a businessman.
So Frederick Thomas went from being oppressed by white folks in the American South to, I don't want to use the word pimp.
I know.
but like in the
Pimp
best
wants to
possible
come.
connotation.
Yeah, Pimp wants to come out here.
Pimp was never used when I was reading on him, but they did say he was a very shrewd businessman who understood how to work
That's
people.
what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I
You
mean.
meant you meant shrewd businessman. He meant shrewd businessman, and I think that's very fair because it sounds like he was very good to his ladies as well. There are numerous stories of scenarios where women were basically on testimony saying he was so good to me, he treated me well, made sure I got home, that sort of thing. So pimp, I mean shrewd businessman.
I would say we would never, and officially on the record, we would never reduce such a hero as Freddie to simply a pimp. What we are saying, in fact, is that Freddie, again, wanted, in touching every piece of the spectrum, definitely took money from, in consignment with, his strippers. He definitely was like, baby, I got a piece of the pie. Here's your piece.
Here's your
Everybody
piece.
goes home. Yeah.
It was
I don't mean that Frederick is a pimp. I mean, he's a fucking pimp. You know what I mean? Like, that's
yeah. He's a true and to Justin's point, as he put so eloquently, he's a fucking businessman. He knows what's up.
Businessman, yeah.
He's fucking happening right now. So Freddie ends up, he's also, as I told you, he's putting on plays, this sort of thing. So he is a full spectrum of entertainment that's going on in Russia. And his name is only growing larger. His life is growing more extravagant. He is, I don't want to touch on our very talented women that I was just talking about, but supposedly he was very good to them as well, made sure they got home, that sort of thing. Anyone who was working for him, really well loved. He was, again, a shrewd businessman. There was a case where he got sued by some French lawyer, and then he just kept making up excuses like, oh, yeah, I can get you the money by the 15th. Oh, I don't have the money, but I can get it to you by the 30th. And just played this guy like over and over again, like not having the actual funds. So he knew how to run around and do the circuit.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very talented. So while in Russia we do not see colors of any kind, but if you're Jew, you better not be Jew.
You better not be Jewish. Holy shit.
This sets up the next portion I want to talk about. As interesting a paradox it is of Russia with race relations at this time under the Tsar, it is horrible to even begin to discuss relations with the Jewish people. Any Eastern European Jew at this time has faced basically anti-Semitism since, the medieval ages. It's in, quite frankly, even later on where we have documentation. It's, he's a villain in Shakespearean plays. So anti-Semitism in Europe is very popular, and Russia is no exception. They are actually kind of even worse about it. At this time, if you were Jewish in Russia, you were ridiculously oppressed. They had full pogroms against the Jewish people where they were just kind of slaughtered in the streets. They were forced into Pale Settlement, which was kind of like an area that they were allowed to live. It was like a
Jewish ghetto.
Yeah, basically a Jewish ghetto that they had in Russia. This was not lost on our hero Frederick Thomas, as he clearly faced oppression back home. So he is, it's not explicitly stated, but he could definitely see parallels between how obviously blacks were treated in the U.S. and how Jews are being treated in Russia.
Yeah, that's a story he knows all too well, personally.
Way too well. And the thing is, if you were anywhere in Europe at this time, you would have seen some type of anti-Semitism. He would have probably even seen the Dreyfus Affair in France, where you just had outright violence towards the Jews in France. But Russia, it is a institutionalized oppression of this group of people under the Tsar. So he decides he'll bring over a play, again, a man of many talents. He brings over a play that was popular in the U.S. that had two prominent Jewish characters, and he hires out Jewish actors to do these particular characters.
Oh,
the name of
Freddie,
the play,
ballsy bastard.
He's ballsy. He's a true trendsetter. Potash and Perlmutter, that's the name of the play. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Please don't hate me if I am. Just bear with me. So he's doing these plays with the intention of, in these plays, the Jews are essentially, they're the good guys. They're great. They're the comedic, protagonist of what's going on. So he brings those over. He's showing those to Russian audiences. I mean, quite frankly,
Yeah,
a very
what a ballsy move.
Ballsy move.
Ballsy move.
Ballsy move. And guess what? True fucking hero that he is doing it. He is at this point also, keep in mind, he has taken up most of kind of Russian lifestyle. He is at this point, I believe, dual Russian citizenship because he can. Again, Russia didn't necessarily have like an American consulate, so he could kind of go around that. So I'll get to that later because that comes up when he has to leave. But so he is just enjoying his life in Russia. It's amazing. Come the 19-teens, particularly late 19-teens, we have a communist revolution that comes to Russia under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin. I don't need to obviously explain this to any of you guys or our very smart listeners. You guys know this.
I guess I see kind of where this is going. Being an industrious, clearly capitalist American, probably don't look too good to the communist revolutionaries.
Particularly that first part where he is industrious. He is enjoying the benefits of pure capitalism, right? He has made a name for himself. He has an extravagant lifestyle. He's in good graces with the leadership, with, the Tsar, most of the family there. So communist revolution comes about. They are kind of against anyone who has any sort of wealth. So now he is not being persecuted for being black, but for having any type of wealth whatsoever. As we all know what happened in the Russian communist takeover.
He fucking escapes the U.S., does this whole thing, right? New York, Chicago, France, the whole thing is finally ends up in Europe, busts his fucking nuts to make a name for himself, takes over the entertainment district of Russia. I'm saying Russia, of Moscow, correct?
Yes, sir. You got it.
So he's doing all this shit only for someone to be like, listen, man, we don't care that you're black. Not like we don't see color. It doesn't matter that you're black. It only matters that all you care about is money. And he's like, no. Where I come from, money equals freedom. Money equals power.
Exactly.
No. I it's not about this for me. But it equals that's what it is for me. Yeah. And they're like, nah. You're rich, dude. We're fucking you over.
Yeah. We take your wealth here. We also still hate the Jews. For some reason,
it's not funny, but it seems honestly like the parallels, and I don't want to get serious for a second, but the parallels between the Jewish stuff going on in Europe to any European listeners that might be listening, it doesn't make sense to the U.S. folks. Like
it doesn't.
I don't know about you guys, but like I never once gave a fuck if somebody was Jewish. Like not even like a little bit. It doesn't register for Americans. Not now. Probably not fucking then. It really registered.
I've always wondered, where does it come from? And I've always kind of thought, maybe it's like a Christian religious thing. Like the Jews denied Christ, but then if you really think about Christianity and its history, like Jesus was a Jew, so then that just kind of doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
And you think about Nazi Germany, which was a religionless country.
Yeah. To your credit, it makes no sense to us. It's such a foreign concept, right? But okay, and which is strange. Full disclosure to any listener, we're millennials. Discrimination of any kind of makes no fucking sense to us anyways. Like we just don't fucking get it, quite frankly.
I don't get it. We obviously we recognize and we understand systemic racism and racism on an individual
level. We get that, but why
it's crazy
it doesn't, people who think that way, it makes no sense to us.
We don't make the jump. And then to try and attempt to take yourself back to that time. And then to also supplant yourself in some sort of Russian idea where being black literally doesn't matter. Or if it did, it mattered so much less than being Jewish.
Because our history is so deeply rooted in
race.
Race,
Maybe it's because, the Americas and all that were so... I honestly, I don't know. Maybe this is ignorant, but like it's so visual that like we showed up, we saw tan people, we were like, y'all got to get the fuck out because we want to be here, and we pushed them around and did a bunch of fucking atrocities.
Yeah.
And then we kind of had already established the slavery thing, and then we brought that over, but it was all based on like the visual interpretation of what you think someone is. But so all that stuff aside, if you think the American ideals, the New World stuff is visual. I can't look in a crowd and pick out a Jewish person who isn't a Hasidic Jew. Truly.
It's very okay. And I don't want to speak for Europe. This is purely going off of a college education I paid way too much for. But European history going well before medieval times, the Jewish folks were scapegoated, purely because of who they were kind of in the class society. They were merchants, that sort of thing. They did handle money. Later on, they were very prominent in kind of the investment industry that was going on, and that carried over. So in Europe proper, they were definitely discriminated against in their own right. Anti-Semitic remarks were kind of common. There weren't necessarily laws against them or any of that. Russia was a step further where they were outwardly allowed to be completely oppressive towards this group of people.
Yeah, he said persecuted in the streets. I mean, that's...
Yeah.
Sorry, and I was going to say, and so for Freddie, that was clearly, let's just use the term, a change of pace from the U.S., where, you see a successful black man in the street. There are loads of white people, mainly in the South, or especially in the South, who would have a huge problem with it. So he goes over there, he feels like a free man, and then the communists come up and they're just like, dude, we want your money. And he's like, no, we already played these fucking games. I played this game back home. So our hero, Freddie, he does escape to Odessa, which at that point is under German occupation. So dynamics, obviously, I don't need to tell anyone listening, just so we have some context. We are in the midst of World War I. And so he gets there. He has a property there. He is going to leave essentially with what he equates to about $20 in his pocket, which is, at this time, it's roughly just a couple $100. That's what he has left. He had to forced to give up his empire that he had in Moscow. And it's very clear this spot is not getting him, he's going to have to leave. So he goes to, I was about to say Istanbul, Constantinople at this time. This is prior to... I only laugh. I do the same thing all the time. Every time.
Because honestly, it's lasted for close to 100 years now. So let's start calling it by the real name. I take that back. No offense to anyone who... I know the Turks were terrible to certain groups, so I'm not trying to offend anyone. But
they're easy names to conflate. That's all we're saying.
Yeah, that's all we're saying.
Let's not forget about the Armenian genocide. Thanks, Turkey.
Yeah.
Let's pause for 1 second and say every single person of every single race, religion, country, and nationality has done something fucking terrible.
That's the truth.
Put all that shit away. We're just going to try to celebrate this guy. It just happens that Europe was very complicated at the time.
It was very complicated. So he goes to Constantinople. He has very little money. He does prosper because he gets there about 1919, kind of end of World War I, right after, he's living there for a while. He does open a series of other nightclubs while he's there.
God damn it.
He is now known as, this is a beautiful statement, known as the Sultan of Jazz.
Oh my God. That's our next t-shirt. That's our next t-shirt.
Sultan of Jazz.
Sultan of Jazz.
When I read Sultan of Jazz, this is someone I knew I immediately wanted to do a story on, okay? The only early documentation of this gentleman was done by one jazz singer who, in her memoir, wrote, the individual, they used a slur term for who he was, who is known as the Sultan of Jazz, Frederick Bruce Thomas, okay? And I was like, oh, wow. Luckily, there is a lot of documentation on who this incredible human is now. So he goes there. He is successful. He sees another essentially overthrow at the end of World War I. We know, obviously, a lot of Europe was reshaped. So was the Middle East. Ottoman Empire was no exception. The new Turkish Republic took over the new Turks. 1923. They see his assets. New Turks are, term I'm going to use is xenophobic. They're not keen on having anyone who is foreign holding any property in country. He says, okay, that's fine. I'm going to talk to the American consulate that's here in what is now Turkey, the new Turkish Republic, and I'm going to get a passport and just go home. I'm going to bus it back to America. This is kind of the saddest portion, I guess, of the story is because he was a former slave, they don't recognize his American citizenship, or his family was foreign slaves, so he wasn't a slave himself. They do not recognize that he was an American citizen. And he is unable to obtain a renewed passport to go home. So as a result, a couple things. So obviously his properties were removed from his power, which is kind of the pressing one that goes on here. So his nightclubs were discriminated against. They went under. He also enjoyed, fellas, if we ever made a shit ton of money, we would probably be enjoying a lavish lifestyle. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's hard to maintain that lifestyle when you have no money. He goes into debtor's prison and he dies in 1928 in debtor's prison.
Wow.
In Turkey, right?
In Turkey. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay.
what is his debt? Oh, his nightclubs go under.
Yeah,
which
his
puts
nightclub,
him in debt.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But before all of this, before they went out of their way to fuck him over, they were doing fine.
They were doing fine.
Yeah,
He was a hit.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah,
hit.
you're right.
At this time, keep in mind, you guys are both incredibly well read. Certainly, you read something like, The Sun Also Rises by Hemingway, where it's kind of his exploits of, American exploration in Europe post World War I. Okay, Turkey at this time, definitely now Istanbul, would be certainly Constantinople immediately following World War I was a tourist destination. People went over and they were enjoying it. There were even testimonies of people who had gone over. They enjoyed the nightlife in Constantinople. It was such a beautiful, fun town. And they were amazed that this black man who is super affluent, who runs the club, right?
Yeah.
They just
can you imagine
this
traveling all the way to Constantinople to, on this big, tour you're doing or whatever, Europe, and it's taken, God forbid, fucking 9 months or something to do it.
Yeah.
As an affluent, probably white person, let's just be honest.
Yeah.
You do that and you walk into a club and you're like, oh, this club's amazing. And the owner comes by and is like, hey, have a couple drinks on me. And it's a black man.
Yeah.
And in your country, not gonna fucking happen.
And because at that time, let's be fair, stereotypes were real. You assume this guy was the waiter. It's like, oh, absolutely, I'll have the, on the rocks.
A couple martinis. He's like, no, you can have those on me. I own this fucking joint.
I own the joint. Wow. I own the joint. I'm the Sultan of Jazz.
Yeah.
Fucking shitstorm. Yeah. So, yeah, he's doing well. He did well in 2 completely separate countries. Really 3, if you think about how the countries were formed at that time. Quite frankly, if you want to count Turkey as a separate one from.
I mean, I would count the early United States as being a black family owning 600 acres. That's amazing.
His parents were incredible what they did. And it was
the
criminal that was taken away.
Exactly. And the only reason that didn't continue and that Freddie actually had to go push off to greener pastures in the north initially and then Europe and then continue to Russia is that it got legally taken away because some judge eventually decided that he hated black people more than this other guy.
That's exactly right. Yeah. At the Supreme
really.
Court level, Supreme Court of Mississippi at that time. Yeah. Decided they were going to, no, you're right. We'll take away the land. And I'm assuming that also came with understanding kind of politics at that time. It wasn't necessarily pure judges. The judge was most likely biased one way or the other, and also was influenced by kind of the rising sentiments that were going on. So certainly all the severe racism that was happening.
Yeah.
So in that case, his family did lose it on really, really horrible grounds.
So let me ask a granular question, I guess, if I could use that term again. I went to college. So the passport thing confuses me a little bit. So he says, no, clearly an American guy, like an American black man is like, I've been in Europe for the last 20 years-ish between, Europe, Russia.
Probably 15. Probably
15. So he goes to the American consulate and was like, what's up? I'm getting fucked over here. I'm just going to bounce back to America. No big deal.
Yeah.
They said no because his parents were
former slaves.
Slaves.
They weren't going to recognize his citizenship.
So because they didn't recognize his parents' citizenship, he was then not recognized as a citizen. Even though in current day terms, and people can feel however they want about this, but if you're born in the U.S., you are sanguine, you are of the blood of the country.
That is
a citizen.
Yeah, that is principle founding. It's right there in the 14th. It's within the first 3 sentences of the 14th Amendment. Yes. Right. So he would, by that, he is technically, they found a way to kind of obstruct that in the sense that I believe in Russia, he did actually take on Russian citizenship, which at that point you would have just been a dual citizen because they probably would have recognized your American citizenship, but you are also in Russia. So once he gets to Turkey, he is now, you know, a foreigner in Turkey where they don't want any foreigners owning any business. They scapegoat you. And now America doesn't necessarily want to give him a passport to go back because, or the American consulate doesn't want to do so because parents were former slaves. Therefore, you are not, you know, necessarily citizen at that point.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand how you can go from owning land and not being a citizen.
Yeah. It makes very little sense, doesn't it? But that also, so that is also testament to how, quite frankly, how sincerely tragic Reconstruction was. I mean, I don't want to go into that whole conversation, but you did have where there were absolute rights and people were amassing wealth and starting businesses, and they had true economic independence and political independence too. They were just as, you know, just second-class citizens going into the turn of the century, well into, you know, the 19-teens, 1920s, 30s, all the way up to about the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
So it is just, again, it's hard for us to even grasp, and we're U.S. citizens. We've lived here and we've been taught U.S. history our entire lives at every level. And that's hard to fathom, right?
Yeah, and one of us is qualified to teach U.S. history, and it's
I don't know who that is, but yeah.
It's still hard to fully wrap your head around that. I mean, just clearly, you had this guy who just went out and, like, you know, in the simplest version, fucking made his nut based on his own enterprising. And in you know, in America, certainly now, is if you go out and bootstrap it, you know, which apparently as a black person at the turn of this, I'm laughing, but like, it's so obnoxious to think that in order for a black person to really come up in the US, they had to go to Russia first, make their nut, and then
that's exactly right. But
have fucking 3 revolutions happen before they get it fucking taken away from them. But you know, he never would have been given the opportunity here in the US.
And he is remember, he's the trendsetter. So he's doing this well before the 1900s even roll along, you know. I mean, he is entering Russia in 1899, you know. I mean, this is as incredible as it gets, and he is making things happen while he's there. He is finessing his way into what you just said. I mean, making this empire.
Yeah, and then
really in Moscow. And then he's able to really kind of rebound in Turkey before that gets thrown over too.
That to me is, so I will say one thing I will question in the story is, did he really go to Turkey with $20, or did he say,
he supposedly
I got nothing but my shirt. I got nothing but my shirt. He's got a chest of fucking gold next to him.
Yeah, I only have the testimony that he left, which is he went with $20. So
yeah,
with the inflation, that would be.
I mean, he's had. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was saying he had to be a smart guy. Like, he knew something. Yeah. He knew communism was coming. He knew what that meant. I'm sure he had some money squirreled away. He's not the first time he's had to dip out of a country.
No,
he did. And that's why he touched down.
Gold. He had some sort of universal value.
He touched down in Odessa, remember, and that's under German control until it does get taken over by Russian control later on during the war, kind of right as Russia ducks out of World War I. But he is there, and he did have property, and he did have money kind of squirreled away, but he wasn't even managed to really leave with that. Yeah. So, you know, by today's inflation, it would have been just a few $100 that he's moving to Constantinople with. He did, to my knowledge, I wasn't able to find anything on this. I only think he would have gone to Constantinople. I mean, it had reputation. It was a tourist attraction at the time, despite even being post-war. Where I don't need to tell any of you, post World War I, all of Europe, all of Ottoman Empire is just kind of destroyed. But he is there visiting, so he must have known someone. He must have had at least some connection there to kind of draw him there. Why would you not, you know, go back to necessarily Paris that could be in the same shape, or right. London, right? So
how long was he doing this stuff in Russia? So he was 18. Russia would have been over.
Yeah. Russia would have been from 1899 through about when the revolution starts, so 1718.
So if
1917 or 18.
Yeah, 1917 or 18. So he's got he's got nigh on, let's just say minimum 15 years. He's got in the entertainment businesses, and he's got, like you said, he's in the biggest city in Russia. He has 90% or whatever of the entertainment district in his back pocket. He's got plays, he's got operas, he's got all that titty money. And
all that titty money. Yeah, big titty money.
He
was
big
honestly,
titty money.
and the thing that I came across, he was the founder of Deja Vu. And you know,
he was the founder. He was the original guy for titty money. But no, I guess my point is that having was it Moscow? It was St. Petersburg at the time, right?
It was Moscow.
It was Moscow. Excuse me.
Yeah.
So, God, I came backwards. So
I totally.
But he's in Moscow for 15 years in the entertainment industry. He's building this name. He's building all this. It is a little hard for me to believe he wouldn't know somebody. He wouldn't get to know the players in a lot of different places, being at that level. You know,
because
all that titty money. It's all that titty money.
All that titty money. Everyone wants to know you when you own the strip club. That's honestly what I hear a lot. But no, to your point, Moscow at that time, again, I know we talked about it earlier, fellas, but that was an international city in its own right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly, definitely prior to the revolution, you were willing to have patrons from other countries come and carouse Moscow as a major hub in its own right. I guess it still is to this day, but definitely at that time, it's the same way Constantinople was its own major tourist destination, major city, international city. So,
yeah. Wow. And they still, it's just one of those things of like, you've got this hero who has this kind of parabola.
Yeah.
He's just getting the fuck out of the U.S., doing his thing, making the money, making the nut, has a bit of a dip, comes back though, stays at the top, and then is like fucked in the end. So
completely fucked.
How old was he when he died in debtor's prison?
So 1872 to 1928. So that would have been 56. I'm sorry.
56. But yeah, and that kind of shakes out, right? If you're in your mid 50s and you're trying to survive a really shitty prison with no moral or human standards, I'm sure 50s probably would have done you in. He could have gotten fucking pneumonia and died.
Easily. In a country that literally just had a regime change, where the Turks are nasty to you because you're a foreigner, yes, you're completely fucked. Yeah. No question. That was a horrid experience for him.
Oh, for sure. Dying in one of the worst ways possible, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And to come from, I don't know. I mean, obviously, no one needs to go through any of that unnecessarily, as much as to have achieved such great heights. And then to just be like, well, you're a foreigner, so you're not welcome here. It's like, again, no. I done been through this shit, man.
No, I already did this, man. You don't understand what I went through back at my home.
I made my fucking nut. Here's my nipple money. All right.
Yeah.
Welcome to the nipple money.
Yeah.
You make a friend with me. All your people got nipple money. I got nipple money everywhere.
Call your buddy Vladdy Lenin. Bring him down here. I'm gonna show him some titties. Okay, he's gonna be fine.
I got top tier titties.
He's like the anti-Timothy Dexter. You know what I mean?
He is. He is.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. Yeah.
Like where Dexter was successful no matter what stupid shit he did. And then this guy always hit rock bottom no matter how smart and how industrious he was.
Yeah. Yeah. This is to me, this was just such a fascinating story on, I mean, as we pointed out numerous times, just the dynamics of cultural references, social cultural references that are going on, but then also just his resilience, right? Like, holy shit, guys. I mean, it takes a lot to start a business, but then to be able to persist in those conditions is just
If I can't sell Russian titties, I'm selling Turkish titties.
Yeah, exactly.
This man knows his business. I'm not going to question his methods. God damn it.
I like how I brought up that there were clearly other aspects, but we would just want to hone in on the titties.
Because we honestly, in truth, there's good money in opera, but there's better money in titties.
There's definitely, and honestly, I know he's the Sultan of Jazz, but fellas, I don't know if we know anything about Turkish jazz. I'm gonna be quite frank.
We don't know anything about Turkish jazz. We know a lot about Turkish titties, though. He's the czar of titties. We do.
Honestly, we can look up Turkish titties right now and probably know the fucking world about it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Pornhub.
Pornhub, definitely. Pornhub. If you want Turkish titties, Pornhub. It's there.
They gotta start paying us, dude.
Yeah,
they gotta start paying us.
Eventually, they're gonna give us money.
sorry, one last item. I was going to say, I think something that appeals so strongly about Freddie's story, and sorry, I keep calling him Freddie. I don't know if Frederick or whatever.
Because you know him, you're good friends, honestly.
We're pals. I feel like I know him at this point because how well the story was told. But I do think something very appealing about Freddie's story is that not only is it the simple, coming from nothing, the family history, all that horrible, horrible discrimination, that nonsense, the bigotry, all the stuff he had to overcome to simply get to where he was. It's that the things that he valued, things that he achieved also appeal to our current day kind of like metrics of success, right? Like he did, I mean, racism or not, this man went out and got his own. Like he overcame all that. He saw the market and was like, it's not going to work here.
But exactly. The dynamic is, and to that point is he had to leave his own country to do it elsewhere in a country that had its own horrible problems going on, right? So he goes over there to do it instead of trying to even make it here because it was just so sincerely oppressive.
Right. And for him to accomplish as much as he did, to so unceremoniously be fucked over by his country one last time results in his demise. Probably after many years of suffering is disgusting. So he is the Sultan of Jazz, always, man.
Sultan of Jazz. Oh my God! And this, I don't want to be sappy. I haven't had too many beers, but this is what I hope we can do with lesser known people. Is like take somebody like Freddie's story and be like, listen, this is somebody you should fucking know. This is somebody's story. Okay, fellas, I did sincerely have to dig some research on it, and I was like, I am proud of this fucking nugget. Frederick Bruce Thomas. This is going to be a fun one. Well, not even a fun one. Just as this. I mean, I'm even considering bringing this up to my own kids. I teach at an all African American school to our audience, so I think it's important that I bring up this type of dichotomy so they understand the world. Essentially what was going on at the time, the stakes that were in play.
Right. I mean, it's a good illustration of no matter how hard life gets for you.
Oh, definitely.
You can always work through it, work around it, and overcome it.
Yeah.
And although, it sucks that he died in debtor's prison, so that you could obscure the story in some way. Like, well, it still ended bad for him, but I mean, he did live a pretty full he lived a much more full and interesting life than I would say 99% of Americans today.
Yeah.
They absolutely did. Yeah.
Let alone Black Americans at the time.
Black Americans who are facing severe oppression at the fall of Reconstruction, right? I mean, this is just a truly incredible story. Yeah. I was just enamored with this thing from the beginning. So anyways, Mr. Justin, do you have a summation you can provide?
I do. I was actually taking pretty good notes this time. I was really interested in this guy.
He always takes good notes. And his summations are always top.
He has tiny fingers, always running over that notepad.
I got tiny fingers.
Powerful fingers. Big
I got these little powerful fingers just fucking cranking out notes. I like this guy because I did Timothy Dexter, and Timothy Dexter was just so easy to hate because he was just such a fuck, right?
He was a villain. I think our boy Frederick is a hero. We would definitely
100%.
Okay.
And they're like they're extreme polar opposites, right? Dexter was a white guy who was uneducated. Frederick Thomas was a black guy who was educated, but still, like, Dexter had it so much easier. He would just fall ass backwards into shit. So summation goes as follows. Frederick Bruce Thomas, his family owned property, pretty small property to begin with, but they made some money off the land. They bought 600 acres during Reconstruction, which is 600 acres is a ton of land by today's standard, but just an immense amount of land by those standards, especially for a black family in America. There was an interesting incident where they were being sued by some racist dick who was denied on what was probably the county level, and then of course, he won maybe by sucking that racist dick on the greater court.
That's how you say it. You got to suck the state dick.
Yeah. Suck the racist state dick.
Sucking that racist state dick. I get it. I get how you did that. Bunch of lynch mobs, Reconstruction, bad shit for black folks for sure. His father was murdered. They lost their land. He took off to Chicago first, right?
Yeah.
Yep, took off to Chicago. It was like a big safe haven city for black folks during Reconstruction. Made his way out to New York. He was waiting tables, right? He was a waiter at the time. Service industry. That's where he probably learned his way through the service industry. Eventually went to London, then ultimately France, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was a waiter in France. The French have an interesting relationship with black folks. I think it's changed nowadays. I think probably for the worst. Anyway, so he leaves France. He makes his way to Russia, of all places, which is the last place I would expect this guy to go, but he did. And we mentioned too, like if he was standing in the Red Square today, he would definitely stick out. But back then he might blend in a little bit better. He becomes the maitre d' at a couple establishments, right? He starts greasing palms, working elbows, whatever the saying is. I'm not good with colloquialisms. He opens up some restaurants, some nightclubs, which we've determined he's been pumping them titties.
Titties. They did many things, but let's focus on the titties.
It was part of it, but it was a pivotal part of it.
It was a pivotal part of it.
Just so the people who are listening, titties. It was low hanging fruit. We wanted to make that joke. He did a lot more than just sell titties.
His nightclubs were like a mullet. The front was all business. You have your opera. In the back were the titties, baby.
Now I'm only imagining the T-shirt with him with a fucking 80s white guy mullet, but it still said the Sultan of Jazz on the top of it. Freddie had a baller fucking mustache the whole time.
Oh, I'm sure.
He had a
He
super
had to
mustache. Yeah,
because this was a period of mustache.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really,
You're not
two
pumping
really
titties
good.
without a mustache.
There's only two. I've only seen two really prominent pictures, and one is he has a fucking pipe and a beautiful hat that maybe someone who runs a titty bar would have, and he is looking like he owns fucking everything because he does. He's the best.
He does. Please continue, Justin. My love.
Yeah. Okay. So he pretty much controls the entertainment industry in Moscow, which I think is great. And then, of course, history happens, communists take over, and he's not being oppressed for being black anymore. He's oppressed for being rich, which is just
Oh my God. Yeah.
Successful utilizing capitalism, right?
Yeah. He's like, oh, we don't hate you because you're black. We hate you because you're a capitalist. Yeah. You gotta go. You gotta give us all your shit. You can stay if you want, but you should probably just leave.
Yeah, you're going to be so scrutinized you want to leave.
Exactly. Yeah, remember that play you did about the Jews? Yeah, real cute. Get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hated that. I don't care if you made honey. We hated it.
So he goes to Constantinople, which I cannot fucking say that word to save my life. Named after Emperor Constantine, that place. With what he claims is $20 in his pocket, which may be a little bit more. Jury's still out.
He was a shrewd businessman.
Yeah. I mean, he knew what was up. He knew what was going down.
He knew what was going on.
There, he opens up more nightclubs. So now he's running an international titty game.
That's beautiful.
That got me. I wasn't expecting it. That got me.
Why isn't that a shirt? International titty game.
International titty game. Just fucking Freddy's face.
International titty game.
I like the good connotation of pimp. That's why I see this guy just like
he's just fucking running.
Not like beating up and exploiting women for sex, but like just selling the
like,
titties. You know what I mean?
It's a business. They're strippers. I pay them and I take care of them. And guess what? I make a fucking ton of money, and so do they.
I make a lot of money doing this shit. Yeah.
You can tell by this picture of me in a pipe and a badass hat.
That's right.
So in Constantinople, he becomes known as the Sultan of Jazz. And of course, once again, there's some turmoil in this part of the world. Constantinople becomes Turkey, pretty much sees his assets, and then his nightclubs go under because he's oppressed. And then, of course, he tries to contact the U.S. consulate to get back to the United States. Some strange, fucked up racist loophole prevents him from going home because he was a slave, not actually. His parents were slaves and not actually citizens, which makes him not a citizen, even though he was born there, which is clearly a constitutional right.
Yeah, spit on the 14th, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he goes to debtor's prison where he dies, which is just the most somber ending that we could possibly have for what had to have been just a really lively, vibrant character.
Oh my God. Yeah, one of the best. God, great.
I want to party with this guy.
This guy, he
seems like honestly top tier.
John Teeter, if you're listening, come pick me up in your stupid little car and take me for a ride. Your
And
67 Corvette.
let's take a ride back and let's party with Frederick Bruce Thomas.
First, we would go shoot Timothy Dexter in the face.
Yeah.
And then we'd go hang out with Freddie and crew
Yeah.
in Moscow in the 19 teens.
Not to jump too far here, but John Teeter's process was pretty difficult. There were 2 loopholes you had to open. So hopefully,
Yeah, so
John,
it sounds like a lot of bullshit anyway.
it does. It does. Bullshit that's true. Also, I do want to bring up it's true. It's true. And the thing is, Kyle knows
I ascribe to the John Teeter thing. I want to believe.
I'm out here. I want to believe, yeah.
Yeah, me and Ryan believe.
I want to believe.
Kyle, you're a monster.
I know. Kyle the Monster. Also the next t-shirt, right behind Freddie.